research and AI. So before I talk about, you see a conjunction added, I'm a language person. So being a language expert, I always talk in terms of grammar aspects first. So if you notice here, the word is connected by conjunction and. So these are two different aspects if you look at it. First is research that most of you are doing. You're starting with your research areas. You're trying to explore new things. And research is always a continuation of whatever you have studied, whatever has been done. There is a term called research gap. I'm sure all of you know about it. You try to look at the ways in which things that are not covered so far, and you try to cover them all throughout your research process, right? This is what is research for all of us, and that is what we all are aiming for by the end of the time we finish our research. Let us come to the concept of AI. Now, where did this thing come from? It's so popular today, especially in Amravati. Everybody wants to be part of the AI community. Everybody wants to do BTech. Why is that? Because this is a technology that is coming from the age-old aspect of the industry age. When we talk about the late 18th century and when industries were coming up, what did the industrial age do for us? It changed the whole dynamics of manual labor into mechanical labor. So everything became easy and efficient for us. So now I don't have to really take the effort of doing anything like a manual labor over here. I don't really have to hold up a fan and say, all right, while I'm giving you a lecture, I'm going to just, get some air and I want to be comfortable. I have these air systems and everything. This is all technology driven. And that is what AI is able to do in various departments. And especially in the field of research, I really like this one scene that is from Three Idiots. I don't know if you can relate with it or not, where Amir Khan explains the very concept of what a machine is. And he says, the lecturer is giving the lecture and the very first question he's asking is, what is a machine? Define a machine. Machine is anything that makes our human efficiency easier. So we don't really have to put the effort to do the thing. It becomes easy on its own, right? And that is what AI is actually doing for all of us. Being researchers for the first time, we think that AI is going to make everything very simple for us. Most of us use it for many purposes. Our objective today is to understand how AI is first being used in the field of research and what are the ways in which you can use it ethically. Because I think for us, it is very important to understand how this tool, how this operating system can be used ethically and usefully. So the way I see it, the evolution of technology is something that we all need to understand. But before that, let us talk about the evolution of research. So just like in the industry age, like I told you, everything was manual. Even for a researcher, things was to a certain level very difficult. I don't know if you remember the dial-in tones that internet had at one point in time when AI was not so advanced. You had to wait for the connectivity. You had problems collecting resources. So much issue in terms of doing work. And that is the reason why the three parameters with which I think research foundationally works on, that is brainstorming ideas, collecting ideas. You read, there's a concept called literature review. Whenever you start your research, you're trying to study references and everything. All that comes under the brainstorming process. The second step that you have is the hypothetical exposition. Many of you call it the synopsis, where you're trying to defend yourself. After the 6 months, you prepare yourself, you're defending yourself to a panel, right? And by the end of the research, what is important is you give evidence of whatever you have done. So your research will be considered valid only if you are able to give the references of your concepts, validate who did that, and how did you actually authentically contribute. This is what is important in research process. And that is how we were doing it in the primitive aspect. But with AI, everything changed. Like I said, your spade work reduced. And that is what AI is doing for most of us, reducing spade work. Basically my expertise is in language. Most of you are from the science background. And when we talk about the science background, the one thing I think most of you experience a lot of struggle is the way in which you construct your language. Is it grammatically correct? Are you able to make sense of what you're writing? I think these are the things you're facing a lot of issue. So these are the things that AI is able to advance and do very well. That is the domain of language. Now what is important for us to understand is that for each one of us as researchers who don't know much about ChatGPT, we consider AI, that is ChatGPT, as a form of guide, counselor and a friend. How is that? Because as a guide it is providing you suggestions. First time you're thinking of an idea, you ask ChatGPT, tell me something about this. Bang, that's the answer. The second thing, resolutions. Not only is it giving you ideas, but it can also give you hypothetical solutions if you're belonging to the chemistry. Many of you are belonging to the chemistry stream. So you have experiments, don't you? So when you're doing experiments, if you give it a hypothetical situations, do you think it will explain a chemical reaction in an interesting manner? It will, to a certain extent. So it is helping people according to them when they're firstly using it. And also, it is assisting you. It is also assisting you in the last level, that is summarizing things and making them easy. So today, that's the end of the theory now. Now let us understand what are we going to do here today. Our objective is to understand what are the two ways in which we should follow our roadmap. What is the first roadmap and what is the second roadmap? The first roadmap is called the initial navigation. How I define initial navigation is the way in which you should work with ChatGPT, or many people work with ChatGPT to come up with effective answers. At least they think they are coming up with effective answers. And the deep navigation will actually tell you the right way or the ethical way in which you should actually incorporate ChatGPT as research scholars. Alright, so let's begin. The very first thing. Now we are doing initial navigation. In initial navigation, the first thing you need to understand is about the way in which you give prompts to ChatGPT. ChatGPT understands the ethic of the very two things that are mentioned and highlighted here. First thing, the language has to be short and concise. And the second thing is that you should ask specific questions. Now I know most of you are thinking, ma'am, you're going too abstract. You're doing ChatGPT, show us some examples. What is this? Alright, if most of you have your mobile phones right now, you can use Google Chrome and just operate in ChatGPT. If you can do that while you're doing this exercise, you will understand better. So let's say, these are the domains in which scholars are usually using ChatGPT. What are the domains? Language translation, you have literature review, you have text generation, data analysis, question and answering. So all these are the domains in which scholars are usually using ChatGPT to find resolutions. Now, the process. The first thing I told you is that ChatGPT understands simple expressions and specific domains. So I did this experiment with one of my very close friend who comes to be hailing from the SAS department here. And I asked her a very simple question. Here basically her expertise is on graph theory. So I asked her, tell me something, if I ask a concept, let's say when you're writing an abstract, are you aware of the concept keyword? So when you write the keywords pertaining to a particular area, you mention it. Will ChatGPT give you right answers if I mention a specific term pertaining to your field? What do you think? What will it answer? Will it answer effectively or not? So I did that. She told me that there is a concept called in graph theory, what is called coloring. So if I ask ChatGPT, what is coloring? Can you tell me what's missing over here? In my command, if I write, what is coloring? Yes, I have not mentioned the specific area or the domain. Because if I write chat, what is coloring, it doesn't know what I'm talking about. It's giving me different areas where coloring as a term is used. So this is the basic thing that we need to understand while we are communicating with ChatGPT. It is simple and easy, but it will not understand hypothetical compositions. You have to be very specific and crisp. Have you understood this? So likewise, when I used effective keywords, what is coloring in graph theory? The prompt was very effective. Alright, the next thing that you need to understand is the way in which you frame your questions. Many people use ChatGPT basically to explain concepts. Like let's say if I write, what is me? and elaborate on me. What is the difference you will notice in both the questions? Can you tell me? If I write these two questions in ChatGPT, what is mean? I think both of you can answer this question. What is mean and elaborate on me? How do you think is the prompt going to vary? What is the difference in the question what and what is the difference in the word elaborate? Yes, exactly. The first one is just going to give you basic parameters, that is, it will define it along with an example. Whereas in the second one, it is going to elaborate more. Not only is it going to talk about mean, but it is also going to talk about different other kinds of aspects pertaining to mean. So this is how people usually use it. So you need to identify with the words like elaborate, critically analyze. In humanities, we usually use critically analyze as a way of understanding extensively about a concept. So use these terms when you use it as a command. That is how you are basically able to understand it better. Alright? So this is how people use it. The other important rule for ChatGPT is use a conversational discourse. Now why should we use a conversational discourse? Can anyone tell me? Anybody has got an idea of what do you mean by conversational discourse? Talk to it. How do you talk to it? Yes.
You just say that, okay, just be if you state prompt stating that be a research scholar and give me these answers, it can generate better.
Yes.
It can just give you answers based on the prompts you are giving in an efficient way.
Yes. And what do I mean when I say avoid technical jargons?
Like, if it's something that is very specific to your area of research, then it may not actually understand what you're saying.
Very good.
In a proper way.
Okay.
So if you actually want to use jargons, maybe give specific informations prior to giving technical jargon, thereby giving a better answers.
Yes, thank you so much. That's perfectly well said. Please clap for him. Can we clap for him? That's a very, very proud answer. Thank you so much. So yes, he's very right. Conversational discourse is important. Firstly, what he said was very right. But additionally to that, you need to understand when you use conversational discourse, you avoid complex sentences. ChatGPT requires small amount of information. If you're going to write too much with too many specification, it is after all an operating system. It will get confused. So use your prompts in a simple manner. Let me give you an example. This is what I found in a research paper where the person has used a conversational discourse. So how he starts is that, hi ChatGPT, in what ways can you be used in healthcare, education and research? This is the first. Now I'm using the conversation discourse. That means I am not discontinuing my conversation here. The second prompt is a continuation to the question. It says, what about journalism and software development? So what you'll notice is that in the conversational discourse, your sentences are short and there is a continuity in the idea. So you're not writing it again like you're doing it in Google. You have to type it again and again and again, look for answers. This is what people find easy. So use the conversational discourse if you're thinking about an idea. Alright? The next thing. ChatGPT is very, very essential for many people in terms of aesthetics, how you present things. Now all of us read research papers, yes? The one thing that you'll notice is in research papers is that, especially in science field, you will not come across icons, images, headings or subheadings unless and until you are doing some chemical reaction or something where you have to talk about the solvents or substances. But ChatGPT is able to categorize things very effectively. So let's say if I read a research paper and I copy that portion, like let's say ChatGPT has word limit in the basic version that you use. So if you copy some of the contents of the research paper, let's say you don't have time, you're not able to understand it very well, and you need some help in terms of understanding the concepts, the simple thing you can do is copy the content and ask ChatGPT to summarize the passage with emoticons. Now this is the fun part. Take a look at this passage. I copied this and I pasted it in ChatGPT and voila. Look at the way in which icons have been represented here to represent the ideas. So that way you're able to condense the data in a more effective manner. Your spade work is reduced because you understand the components, you don't have to use a notebook and categorize them. Everything comes categorically and in an efficient manner. So that's very good because we live in the age of AI. We are not using anymore, we are not reading books. We are the Instagram generation, as we say. We go for images and videos. So this is very effective to visualize things better as we are going through so that we don't miss out on something very important that is there in the research paper. Right? Another thing is, like, this is mainly important in terms of categorical and tabular representation. Like, let's say this is a passage. ChatGPT can even divide it into components, main components and sub-components. And what happens with this is that you're able to understand things even effectively. So not only do you have iconic representation, but you also have categorical and tabular representation. Like here, you can notice it has almost maintained. You don't have to make a table. Just ask ChatGPT to do it and it will categorize everything effectively. So this is how your work is actually turning out to be better. You have effective information there with you as handouts, right? Another thing, ChatGPT is also an essential plagiarism toolkit. Now how is that? I came across a paper that was very interesting in which a person actually was suggesting in an experiment that ChatGPT can actually tell you if the content that you have pasted, let's say if you create some content in ChatGPT, it is actually able to tell you whether it owns ownership of that content or not. So this is something that you as scholars need to be aware of. Don't use ChatGPT to create your content. It is effective to understand the way in which you are forming language structures and everything, but it is not effective because in the coming age, you are using ChatGPT and even the scholars and the people who are publishing your work, they also will have access to ChatGPT. So if anything goes wrong, they will be able to figure out whether you own ownership or ChatGPT owns ownership. So this is where you have to be very careful. This feature is available in ChatGPT. Another thing is that it is also helpful. Many people use it for implications, management, if you want references. ChatGPT is very good whenever it comes to the MLA reference. I'm sure all of you are aware about MLA, APA format that you use. ChatGPT is actually able to give you the standardized format. So if you give it a reference and ask it to convert it in MLA format, just write the name and it will give you everything in just a click. So this is where it is handy. You're not having a risk. It will take the references and it will exactly execute it in the format it should be. Alright? So these are the ways in which I feel researchers are constantly using ChatGPT in the initial navigation. But the question is, even though these are the steps that you are using as a researcher, which of them is effective and which is going to be a threat for you while you are researching? That is where we come to the deep navigation. This is the last section that we have in which we understand that even though ChatGPT is effective, it is not something that you can depend on. It's a tool, not a dependent system. How is that? I'll tell you. I'm a big fan of the poet Edgar Allan Poe, especially his poem called Raven. Now take a look at the first line. I love these lines, so I'm just going to call it out and show you how you can transform a poem by Edgar Allan Poe into something based on a chemistry lab experiment. So these are the lines. Once upon a midnight dairy, while I pondered weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious forgotten volume of lore, while I wanted nearly napping, suddenly I hear a tapping, as someone gently rapping, tapping at my chamber door. 'Tis some visitor, I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. So these are the initial lines, very spooky and very scary. That is what the feel has to be. And I asked ChatGPT to show me a chemical reaction with the Edgar Allan style quote, show me the chemical reaction between hydrogen and methane. And you won't imagine the style in which it actually wrote. Once upon a laboratory dairy, while I pondered weak and weary, over chemical mysteries strange and eerie, while I delved in the dark of scientific lore, the curious reactions of hydrogen and methane, suddenly there came a revelation, unforeseen as elements began to fiercely roar. Do you see the style? It's amazing. It's so cool. But you need to understand this very cool experiment can be fatal. Why? Can you tell me why? What is missing over here? What is the one thing that is missing over here? If you just look at the prompt that it has given, what do you feel is the airy thing? Something that is not right. What is not right over here? Yes, references. This is where ChatGPT is not at all reliable. It can do everything effectively. It can mix and match. It is a good mixer. But it lacks the efficiency to tell you which component has come from which source. This is why when you start as researchers, you should not depend on ChatGPT. ChatGPT is an effective language tool, but ChatGPT is not effective when it comes to doing your literature review. I'll tell you a very good example. One of my colleagues, very close friend again, I asked her, let's try an experiment. She's again from graph theory and she told me that ask ChatGPT to give a definition of B-chromatic number. Anybody aware of that? B-chromatic number in graph theory? Nobody knows it? Alright, so it's a technical term. It's okay if you don't know. So she told me that just write it and let's see the prompt. I wrote the prompt and the entire definition was wrong. Entire definition. So what does this tell you? That only a language expert, the one who has the knowledge, can tell whether ChatGPT is giving the right prompt or not. It is overconfident. It is just going to tell you steadfast, this is right, this is also right, this is also right. And I'm not going to tell you the reference. So that is how overconfident it is. So don't use it for that purpose. Alright? Another important thing, why do scholars use this technology? This is another question that I want to ask all of you. Because we live by the dictum, I don't know if you've heard of this, let me talk about this aspect first. Publish or perish. How many of you heard this? Publish or perish. Alright, what do you mean by that? Come on, let's hear it from you. What do you mean by that? Okay, in terms of research, what does it mean? In the field of research, when I say publish or perish, what do you mean by that? Yes, thank you ma'am, that's very well said. It focuses on the concept of quantity over quality. So you are always focusing on the fact that more papers, 1 year, how many papers did you publish? That is the kind of pressure that you have as a scholar. Have you done it? No, I have not done it. There's no quality in my paper. My guide is really, he just keeps scolding me every time, I don't know what to do. And that is the pressure all of us have. So which is why we are relying on this tool more and more as a form of stress buster. So that is where we need to understand. It's up to you. If you want quality content, you need to put the effort. You need to take the time. Only then will the content come up more beautifully. Right? So don't be stressed. Work on your concepts well. Another important thing that ChatGPT is not able to do is that it is not able to represent systematic review. There is another term called systematic review. Systematic is when you arrange it in proper ethical order. It doesn't know because it is taking information from 10 sources and bringing it together. So that is why ChatGPT is not at all effective for you in that domain. Another interesting term I came across in a paper was called the Matthew effect. Anybody knows this? Matthew effect? Matthew effect is the effect in which ChatGPT gives more importance to those research papers or scholars whose name is more popular in the research area. So let's say if I'm talking about eco-criticism, or let's say that is, I'm from the literature background again. So if I ask it, tell me something about the important papers in the field of psychoanalysis. The only names it will give first is Sigmund Freud and Jacques Lacan. Not beyond that. It will not be able to give importance to the upcoming scholars, which is why you should not rely on this completely. If you want updated information, new information about new things that people are doing besides the pioneers, avoid using it for this aspect. Put your effort in terms of exploring new research papers so that you can come up effectively. Is that clear? Then I already spoke about research gap. This is what you as scholars, you have cognitive recognition in terms of knowing how effectively you can come up with a paper. But ChatGPT cannot do it because it is amalgamating everything together in one front, which is why you should be careful about it if you want to use it effectively. The other thing is old database. This is not something that is having updated information. I'm sure all of you are aware about it. If you ask for latest papers, most of the papers are outdated. So this is something where plugins come into as a feature. That is again something that developed nations can cater to when we talk about the upgrade that is there in ChatGPT. But the new version that is not the unpaid version does not have that feature of updating content. So it takes a lot of time and it's not something that is very ethical again, alright? Because your research will never have logical aspects. Then the information that is given is also not accurate. When we talk about statistic figures, like in ChatGPT, there's this very interesting experiment that was done in the field of medicine. And ChatGPT, it was interesting to see how ChatGPT was not actually able to analyze effectively how this particular issue, the health constraint that is diabetes, how it is represented in the general population. Because again, this requires factorial figures, data, and that is something ChatGPT cannot do on its own. So it's not at all reliable. This is something that you have to do it on your own. It can create an effective form for you, but it cannot do the survey for you. That is where you need to understand, alright? Then it is not having the capacity to self-correct things, it is overconfident. I like this term AI hallucination, that is for the false information that it gives. So this is somewhere we need to be very careful while we are using this particular operating system, that is ChatGPT. And another important thing about it is that it is lacking emotional enhanced prompts, which is why people are not really able to use it where it is required. Because sometimes we are giving it prompts so that it can understand it better. It is after all a machine. It will never take over the things that you want to learn in life in terms of emotional comfort. AI will never replace that. So these are altogether some of the things that tell us about the essence of what ChatGPT is capable of doing and how you should use it effectively. I like this line by Voltaire in which he says, cultivate your own garden. That is from his work called Candide. And it means that you have to be the planters. Don't use ChatGPT for your initial premise or initial work that you're doing. Use it as a tool for effectively structuring your language, either giving it information and getting it categorically represented. There ChatGPT is fine. But if you're relying it for knowledge, ChatGPT is not the device that you should be using for your research progress. And that makes a conclusion to this. I hope I've been able to impart something to all of you. Thank you for being patient listeners. Thank you.